Hello. I'm gonna talk about task-based learning, and the presentation was made by me, Yifan Chen. So let's begin. Historical background for the methodology. This is a task-based language teaching TBLT, and it was first developed in the 1980s by N. Prabhu, a teacher and researcher in Bangalore, South India. And it is a method of sequencing activities in your lessons. What does that mean, sequencing activities? That means that the activities will begin with a simple activity, or yeah, in order to complete the task, which the task is like the main aim or goal. So the activities can be simple, like asking the students to think about something. Therefore, they will think like further from that activity, and they will need to use their intuition. And that's called scaffolding. It's like stairs going little by little in order to reach the goal, which is the task, and bringing the real world into the classroom. Well, that's basically bringing to the classroom a very communicative class. It's not about grammatic syllabus, and learners will be provided with a natural context for language use instead of grammatic practices. This will make the class smoother and more practical in a conversational way, which is a useful methodology to use. So, in communicative language teaching, CLT. So, I'm going to move on with authors or group of instructors who use a methodology. So, in this, I use Rod Ellis example, which is called the map task, and instructions says, listen to the teacher's description of the island, enter these places on the map of the island. So let's begin with the question. What is a task? A task is a teaching language activity that must satisfy four criteria. A task involves primary focus on meaning. The students choose the linguistic and non-linguistic resources needed to complete the task. A task has a clearly defined communicative outcome, and it has kind of a gap. So I'm going to explain each of the criteria. So a task involves primary focus on meaning. Well, with the map task, of course, it has focus on the meaning because the students are being provided with the description of the possible and solved map. So they need to use their auditive skills in order to achieve their goal, to complete the whole 7 places on the map. So the students choose the linguistic and non-linguistic resources needed to complete the task. Well, yes, it of course use linguistic resources, and linguistic resources, it's not only production like orally speaking, it also uses the ears, the auditive skills to complete the task by listening the description and instructions of what the teacher is saying. And a task has a clearly defined communicative outcome. Well, of course, because the students will be able to talk with the teacher and ask questions to the teacher, like, for example, can you repeat it for me? Where is Beru located? Oh, it's located in the nostrils. And you can see in the map that here it's looking like a pointy nose, the forehead, the scalp of the head, the back of the head, the neck, the chin. It's a very human um, size or image of the map. So, yep. I'm gonna move on. Theoretical background that supports the method. So, what is a task? I already explained. N has some kind of gap. So, the gap is between the teacher and the student. The teacher knows information and is providing that information to the students, and that's the gap. However, there are activities that are teacher per se, teacher versus student, or student versus student. Most of the time is student versus student in order for them to create a dialogue and communication. So I'm going to explain the three types or mention the three types of gap. So first of all, the first gap is the information gap, where one person has information and the other person doesn't. And the other is the opinion gap, where is some kind of problem and the students have to discuss the problem and come up with what they think is the best solution for that problem. For me, the opinion gap or reason gap, well, the reason and the opinion gap are very similar, but the opinion gap, they will express their personal opinions, which is very critical in a communicative environment and lesson. So I'm gonna move on. No, wait, theoretical. And then there is task supported teaching. Task can substitute the final step in a traditional present, practice, or produce. That's PPP sequence. That means a language item is first presented to the learner by means of examples with or without explanation. So that means that without explanation, the teacher is providing examples and the students will use their own language resources in order to reach the goal. And they need to use intuition too. And this item is then practiced in a controlled manner using exercises. So I'm going to explain the difference between a task and an exercise. So a task is from primary focus on trying to communicate. There is a gap. Learners use own linguistic resources. Successful performance equals outcome of task achieved. And exercise, text manipulation. That means typically in an exercise, learners are given some language and they need to manipulate in some way. For example, fill in the blank or substitution words. So in a lot of scenarios, teachers use a book and there are some exercises in the book. And these exercises are, for example, fill in the blank. It's like more grammatically focused instead of a more natural and communicative way. So, for example, in an exercise, um, they have all the words provided, so they're not using language resources because the resource is already sorted in the book, and they just need to write it down on the paper in order to complete the exercise, which is not that very effective. But yes, that's how it is between a task and an exercise. And how the methodology is or was used. Task-based approach aims to provide learners with the natural context for language use. As learners work to complete the task, they have abundant opportunity to interact. What does that sentence mean? The teacher provides a task. It can be a main task or a small task, but they need to scaffold um, the task with the activities, and the students have the abundant opportunity to interact. So It can be in small groups or in big groups or the entire class. So that means that if the students want to talk, they can of course talk, and they can exchange information and opinions and reasons and all of that stuff. And such interaction is though to facilitate language acquisition, as learners have to work to understand and comprehend each other and to express their own meaning. Thank you.